right, everybody. This is going to be the first upload on this channel in a hell of a long time. Probably the last one for a hell of a long time, too. I just feel like doing this to stroke my own ego so I can say later that I either got this election completely right or that I screwed up and will never mention this again. Anyways, for any of you who have watched my channel before, about 4 years ago, a little past this date, 4 years ago, I uploaded a Biden versus Trump election prediction. And I got 49 out of 50 states right. I only got Georgia wrong. And as you could tell, if you look at the time at the bottom right corner, it's election day yet again. I postponed this one for a while because this race has been so tight, and I wanted to make sure no new polls or anything came out. But we are here on election day, and it's time to make our final prediction, or at least my final prediction. Um, this is either going to be extraordinarily far off or right on, and I can tell it will be one of those two. I will not be almost right. I will either be completely right or 100% wrong. Anyways, so this has been an extremely close or allegedly close election. If you notice this, I'm not actually going to put too much stake in the polling. It's been super wrong. I think everyone knows, of course, 2016. It was also pretty bad in 2020 as well. Even though most polls correctly predicted Joe Biden would win, it was kind of framed as a Biden landslide when in reality he won in the closest election since 2000. Only 43,000 votes in three states decided the last election. The closest since Florida's 500 in 2000. I actually don't believe this election will be that close. People keep saying this will be the closest election in history, and I believe what's happened is something known as poll herding, where because everyone is saying the election is close, the pollsters kind of choose their sample to reflect that because everyone is scared of being wrong, like they were in the previous elections. So everyone just wants to have the same result. That's why every poll has the same result. It's always 49-49. Maybe one candidate has a 1 point lead. They're all within 47 to 50%, and anyone rarely has more than a 2 point lead. So yeah, this is kind of, I think we're seeing kind of a hive mind collective forming with the pollsters here. But anyways, let's get right into this prediction. Um, let's start off with safe states. Okay, so safe states, in my definition, are states that will vote by one candidate by over 12%. Some people do 15. I think that's a little high. But yeah, so we're going to start with the darkest blue states. And so these are states I believe that Kamala Harris will win by over 12 points. Let's start off with some of the easier ones here. We got Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington. Nothing too shocking about that there. Now let's go to Colorado. This is a bit of it's an iffy one. Biden won it by about 13 points in 2020. I believe it'll be around the same margin. Now that's over my 12 points. So that is a safe blue state. However, I wouldn't be shocked if that went down the likely. We also got Illinois here. Not too shocking. This one tightened up a little earlier in the race, but I believe it's kind of rebounded back. Going off the East Coast here, we got DC, Maryland, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont. Sorry, one of my cats is meowing. Bro, be quiet. I'm recording, broski. Be quiet. I had to go yoink my boy real quick. He was meowing a bit. Also, okay, next up we got Maine's first congressional district, and that's all the safe blue states. Actually, oops, forgot about New York there. Actually, speaking of New York and New Jersey, those are ones that looked like they were going to be a lot closer earlier in the race before Biden dropped out. I honestly think Biden dropping out was the best possible thing that could have happened to the Democrats, mainly because he was on track to lose in a landslide. Like we're talking about Dems losing New Mexico, New Jersey, New York being a swing state, Illinois under threat. So they're lucky he got replaced. Anyways, these are the safe blue states. Kamala Harris starting off with a pretty decent 191 electoral votes. Let's go on the Trump here. We got Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana. I think you see the usual suspects are coming out here. Nothing too shocking yet. North and South Dakota, Nebraska's third congressional district, Oklahoma, Missouri's a bit of an iffy one. I think this will be borderline between safe and likely. Do not see it as competitive at all. Hasn't really been competitive really since 2008. So, but that could be a little bit iffy. I could potentially be wrong on there. It's kind of always the borderline between safe and likely. Coming down, we got Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, rounding out our safe states. These are over 12 points. So next up, we'll go do likely, a shade lighter. And that will be states that will vote for their candidate between 5 and 12 points. So they're not like locked in, but they're also not really competitive states. Um, Starting off here, we got New Mexico. I think one of the few states that Trump could really improve on his 2020 margins. It's just more demographically favorable to him. A lot of younger Latino men are kind of switching over to the Trump column. New Mexico is the only majority Latino state in the nation. Um, and yeah, it's a state that I think will probably vote very similarly to where it did to 2020. Kamala could do better than Biden by like 1 point. Trump could do better by 1 point. I think each demographic trending kind of cancels out. So older white people becoming more democratic cancels out younger Latino men who are a huge percent of the state's population trending red. Coming up, we got Nebraska's second congressional district. Nebraska and Maine, if you've noticed, they divide up their electoral votes based off congressional district. So while it may appear shocking that there's a blue part of Nebraska, this is just Omaha, which is a pretty big city. So unsurprisingly, a big city is voting for a Democrat. Uh, it's it's actually happened pretty frequently. In fact, Hillary Clinton is the only recent Democrat to lose Nebraska second. She's only the recent Democrat to lose a lot of things too. So yeah, that I think is fairly safe. In fact, that actually could be a safe margin. I'm just erring on the side of caution here when it comes to that one. Minnesota, another one. This should be a lot better for Kamala. Demographically, very favorable to her. Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, is on the ticket. However, a lot of progressives are in Minnesota. A lot of people of Arab descent are there. A lot of Muslims. Unsurprisingly, those people are kind of pissed at Kamala's refusal to change anything about Biden's unpopular Gaza policies. And yeah, it's kind of understandable when you're people are getting vaporized in their house that it's kind of hard to vote for the person who's signing off on the thing that vaporized them. So yeah, I think that will hurt her margins in states like Minnesota and Michigan. Michigan's a bit of iffy one, but Minnesota it shouldn't be enough to actually put the state in play. It'll probably be very similar to its 2020 margin or to Tim Walz's 2022 margin in his governor race. I highly doubt it will flip. It's just that it should be better for Kamala, but she's just that she hasn't really put much effort into maintaining her base's cohesion. Coming up to our next likely blue state, we got Virginia here. This looked like it was really bad for Biden earlier in the race. However, it's kind of flipped back to Kamala. I think there's a lot of those Nikki Haley voters. This is one of Nikki Haley's better states breaking for Kamala. A lot of those undecided older white people breaking for Kamala. Very older state, very white state. That demographic is actually trending Democrat. Um, so that's good for her there. New Hampshire, likely blue state. This could be a safe blue state. This I wouldn't be shocked if this turns safe. This one's trending Democrat. Again, a lot of older, white, moderate people trending Democrat. And yeah, so I would not be shocked if New Hampshire is could be a safe state. Maine, also, Maine and New Hampshire vote together most of the time. They also have very similar results, so it's kind of the same reason. They're basically they're kind of almost the same state, basically. Very similar demographics, very similar politics. New Hampshire is a little bit more Republican history, but especially in recent elections, they voted very similarly. All right, coming up to likely red. These are states that will vote for Trump between 5 and 12 points. Starting off with Alaska. This is one I think where Kamala will improve significantly. Again, older, whiter, more moderate people are trending Democrat. Nikki Haley voters trending Democrat. Your John McCain Republicans. I wouldn't really call them trending Democrat. More they've trended anti-Trump. So if Trump's the Republican, they're probably going to be voting Democrat or sitting it out, which is good for Democrats. Coming up, we have Nebraska's first, some suburbs here of Omaha, some suburbs here of Nebraska's capital, Lincoln, I believe. So this isn't always going to be a safe red district. If anything, Kamala could bring this down to likely if it's a good night for her. Highly unlikely that she'll win it, but it's there. It's been a lot of suburbs. Those are trending Democrat. Those will help her. Same thing with Kansas, pretty fast growing state. it's kind of the straddles the margin between safe and likely. Probably around a 10 to 11 point victory for Trump, a little down from 2020. This is one of the more tech states, is one more fast growing states in this region. Also a more moderate one, more older white people. Again, your type of Nikki Haley anti-Trump voters. Move over here to Mississippi. Another likely one that's probably around 9 to 10 points. Mississippi isn't as red as you may think it is. A huge black population. Obama was actually relatively competitive there. Biden, I believe, got it down to a likely margin. I think the only one who didn't get it down to a likely margin recently was, unsurprisingly, Hillary. But yeah, it's a more it's not as red as most people would think it is. In fact, in 2022, the Democrat for the governor race there got got within, I believe, 48% of the vote. Got within 3 points, which is down to lean, but that's actually kind of competitive. So that could be that could be an interesting story if it's a really good night for Kamala. Ohio, this is a lean red state. Oops, not you, Indiana. Go back to safe. Um, I mean, excuse me, this is a likely red state. There's been some movement in Iowa. We'll talk about that when we get to it. Ohio it could straddle the border between lean and likely. My gut tells me likely. It's more favorable to Trump, a lot more industrial working class type of people. The Senate race here will be more interesting. We'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, I think Ohio will kind of stay. I think actually it will narrow up a bit compared to 2020. Kamala may overperform Biden by 1 to 1.5 points. I'd say she'll max out around 47% of the vote. South Carolina, also not as red as you may think. Obama got this down to single digits. Biden got it within a likely margin. I think Kamala will do a little better than Biden, probably around Obama's 2012 margin. Obama did slightly worse in 2012 than he did in 2008. So probably around 10 points. And yeah, so this is actually, oops, got one more likely state, and that is Florida. Again, this is one that straddles between likely and lean. Trending heavily R though. So I think everyone kind of knows that. Florida has experienced a lot of immigration, but also a lot of emigration. So a lot of Republicans are moving there, and a lot of Democrats are moving out. So Florida's kind of an anomaly. So if we see, for example, that Trump is blowing it out in Florida early on in election night, but he's not doing as well elsewhere, that is more of a sign that Florida has changed and is not really a sign that the nation has changed. So if we see Trump winning Miami-Dade or something, but underperforming everywhere else, it actually makes sense. Florida has changed so much in 4 years. It's basically a different state at this point. And that will actually get us to the lean states. So lean states are ones that go between 1 and 5%. Let's start off with lean blue here. We'll start off, now, these are actually probably going to be some hot takes some will drop, but I'm actually going to say that the entire Rust Belt trio, this infamous Rust Belt trio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, are all lean blue. I'll say Wisconsin will probably be around a 2 point victory for Kamala, Michigan around a 1 to 2 point, and Pennsylvania a 2 to 3. Now, Pennsylvania is one where I just totally break with the consensus about. Republicans were heavily overestimated there in 2022, to the point where Democrats outperformed the polls by as much as 7%. In addition, Pennsylvania is a state that people have convinced themselves is like a 50-50 split state. And I believe that's where that poll hurting that I described could hurt, where people are, where pollsters just want the state to be 50-50. So they adjust their polling data and they weight it to make it 50-50 when that's not actually what their raw data suggests. So yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a 2 to 3 point down victory. I could be 100% wrong about this. And but this is what my gut is telling me. I've kind of ignored polling more recently. And hey, look at that! Look at that electoral count at the top of the screen. Look who hit 270. So as you can see, I projected that Kamala will win the election, but we are not done yet. We still got a lot of white on the screen. And that means it's time for lean red. So start off here with Texas. I think Texas will be a lean red state. I think this year is a uniquely good year for Democrats. Texas is kind of the opposite of Florida. We got a lot of Democrats moving to Texas. Not so much Republicans moving out, but a lot of Democrats moving in. In addition, your older, white, more moderate people in your Houston or Dallas or Fort Worth suburbs trending there. When we get to the Senate race with Colin Allred, we'll see a lot more of that. We'll see a lot more of that in 2018 when Beto O'Rourke came super close to beating Ted Cruz in 2018. A pretty shockingly close result. I think we could see something like that tonight, where it's just super close, but where a Republican narrowly edges out. Speaking of Iowa, I was shocked when I saw the Des Moines Register poll that came out on Saturday. The most reliable Iowa pollster had Kamala up 3. I'm gonna be real. I don't buy that. I can't see that. If that happens, whatever. All right, don't blame me. But yeah, if that happens, I'll be shocked. I'll be stunned. If that happens, we're talking blue Texas. Who knows? Maybe even blue Florida, blue Alaska. We're seeing everything. If we get Iowa +3 Dem, don't see that. I think it'll be. I used to have it as likely R before this, but because that pollster is so reputable, I kind of have to tighten it up. I'm saying a 3 to 5 point Trump victory, which by the way would be terrible for Trump. You do not want Trump. Trump. This is a state that Trump won by 9 in 2016 and by 8 in 2020. If you want to win, you do not want to be losing 5 points worth of votes. Finishing off our last lean state, we're going Maine 2. This is one that's received very little polling. It was solidly Democrat until Trump flipped it in 2016. He held it in 2020. It's kind of hard to tell. It's actually represented by a Dem in Congress, a guy named, I believe it is it Jared Golden. Don't quote me on that. Some name like that. But yeah, this is one I think could be a toss up. My gut, there's been like 2 polls that have came out through this in the entire election, so it's kind of hard to tell with this one. My gut's telling me lean. I could be off about this one. It was Trump +10 in 2020, so we'll just see. We'll hold on about that one. But anyways, Kamala's already run according to my prediction, so it doesn't really matter. And so next up, we got tilt states. These are states that, according to my prediction, will vote for their candidate by less than 1 point. So what that means is they're a toss-up, and this is entirely based off my gut. This is entirely vibes based. This is entirely what I'm feeling. The states are way too close to legitimately call, and they're basically toss-ups. And I'm gonna call it. This could be the point that ages terribly. If I happen to have come down with a cold recently, so if this ends up being wrong, I'm blaming it on that. I got infected with the stupid virus. Nobody blame me if this ends up being completely wrong. But I'm actually gonna say there's gonna be a Kamala sweep. All these are tilt blue. Yeah, so this is a decent chance it's gonna age terribly. Um, I'm fully prepared for that. Don't quote me on any of this stuff. Um, if I'm right, I am a genius. I'm a god in human clothing. Lightning bolts shoot from my fingertips. If this is completely wrong, I was sick. My mind was clouded. I never posted this. Just ignore it if I was wrong. But if I'm right, I was there all along. I am the new Nate Silver. I am Nate Gold. But anyways, this is my presidential prediction. Great chance this will age terribly. Low chance it will be spot on. But here's hoping. All right. With these states, if you want me to say why uh, I have them going tilt Kamala, I can't really explain it. There just seems it's kind of a vibes based thing. It just feels like Kamala's pulling out. North Carolina, she's actually got some great polls. She's pulling ahead. The early votes actually half decent for Democrats there compared to some of these other states. There's also the unpopular Gooner, who the Republicans decided to run as governor. Don't know how they didn't find out about him before the race, but it's too late for them now. I think Mark Robinson, everyone's favorite E621 user, is pulling down their other candidates, including Trump himself. I think enough people might be outraged by that to where they might not vote Republican. They could be like, how could the Republicans nominate this guy? I'm not going to vote for him. They might just leave it. They might just leave the presidency blank or the governor blank or whatever. But it might be enough. Georgia, I'm going off 2022 polls underestimated Dems there. In fact, they kind of underestimated Dems in 2020 slightly as well there. It seems to be consistently tilt Dem. That's something about Florida. I mean about Georgia. It's consistently tilt Dem. Also on Nevada, that's just my gut telling me. It's been lean the likely Dem the last couple elections, trending towards Trump. I'm not sure this will be the year that Republicans can flip it. So I'm just going to put it as tilt Dem. Arizona, this is the super iffy one. Arizona, all the polls say Trump is going to win. I don't feel like that's going to happen. In 2022, the polls are saying Carrie Lake would win. They would say it was a toss up between Mark Kelly and Blake Masters. Both Dems ended up winning, so whatever. That's my gut telling me that. Nobody quote me on that. But you know what? I got a treat. I didn't do this last election, but I'm gonna predict the Senate as well. I'm gonna go less in depth about the about the Senate here. So let's start with the safe ones. We got California, Washington, New York, Vermont, Maine. I know Angus King from Maine and Bernie Sanders are independents. They're they're literally Democrats. I'm sorry. They're just Democrats, even if they officially are listed as independents. This is Bernie Sanders we're talking about. He's a Democrat, all right. Um, those New England states, I think, are safe. Hawaii is obviously safe. Now, initially in this race, it appeared that Maryland would be close because the Republicans ran the popular former governor Larry Hogan. However, polling has showed that the Democrat Angela Alsobrooks is probably ahead by around a safe margin, around 12 to 13 points. I see that if this were a midterm, Larry Hogan would have a lot better chance. However, I think Kamala at the top of the ticket really helps the Dem there in an already safe blue state. So I'm going to say it's a safe blue state. New Jersey looked pretty close initially. This was mainly because the unpopular incumbent senator Bob Menendez, who got exposed for being like taking like gold bars from Egypt or something, being super corrupt. It initially looked like he would win, or I mean, would run and then lose to a Republican. However, he was replaced by a guy named Andy Kim, who seems decently popular in the state, and so it looks like he'll win by a safe margin. Also, we got Virginia here. This one that it looked like it could have been a closer one too when Biden was still in the race, but since Biden dropped out and the Republican candidate there, his name is Hung Kao, he hasn't gotten very much funding. Doesn't look like he has much of a chance. We'll say Tim Kaine. Yep, that is Tim Kaine as in Hillary's VP pick. I think he'll win by a safe margin, probably around exactly 12 points. So that could skirt likely. But I'm gonna ball it and say um, we're dealing with a safe margin here. Safe Republican states. Yeah, Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota. This little circle here, that's Nebraska's special election. I think one of their senators resigned. So, in addition to their regularly scheduled Senate seat, they're going to have another Senate election for their other Senate seat for the guy that resigned. That one's a safe red, though. We'll talk about the other one in a bit. That's actually kind of interesting. Tennessee and West Virginia also safe, also safe Republican. Let's talk about lean Democrats. This is New Mexico, basically the same reasons for the presidency, and we'll go in less in depth about this. Arizona, this is quite a different one from the presidency. The Republicans decided to run Carrie Lake again after she lost last time. A great idea to run a losing candidate again. People already knew that she lost. To your average low information voter, people will only remember her as that's the person who lost. Why should I vote for you? People who pay attention to politics don't think like that, but most people don't pay attention that close to politics. So most people see Carrie Lake as a loser. Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, has pulled as high as like 15 points ahead. I don't see that. I think this will be around a 7-8. Maybe he could barely break that double digit. But I think Ruben Gallego should easily win. That will probably get called on election night, as opposed to the presidency. I think Arizona could be the closest presidential state. Nevada, another one. It's kind of same reason. Popular incumbent Democrat, poor Republican opponent, underfunded Republican opponent. Um, I don't really see the Republicans picking this one up. Probably be around 5 to 7 points in favor of the Dems. Minnesota, we got Amy Klobuchar, if you remember her from the 2020 presidential race. She's running underfunded Republican opponent, same story. Bob Casey in Pennsylvania. This is one people say is close. Again, I don't buy it. In 2022, they said that Dr. Oz, the Republican, was going to win by 2. That's what the polling averages showed. John Fetterman, who I'm not a big fan of, by the way, won by like 5 points. So yeah, if we're dealing with a similar error in this election, I don't see it as being close. And in addition, Bob Casey, the incumbent Democrat, already leads in the average. So if we're having a similar polling error, he'll probably win by like 7 points. Anyways, let's go down to likely R. F. Actually, no, excuse me. That's I don't consider Florida Senate likely. We'll get into that in a bit. Mississippi, likely again, same reasons as the presidency. State level elections tend to be a little closer. I could see this being a 10-point victory, a 7-8 point victory. Indiana, unpopular governor. excuse me, unpopular Senate candidate, uh, a strong libertarian vote. Most libertarians um, are Republican voters, so a strong libertarian candidate will take away from Republicans. Don't see it will be that close. This is one that could be interesting. Missouri Senate. Josh Hawley is considered to be one of the more extreme Republicans, not that popular. He actually defeated a Democrat in 2018, an incumbent Democrat in 2018 to become senator. And so a pretty decently well-funded Democrat is running up against him. And that's showed and has actually appeared to be relatively close in polls. Kind of hard to tell, but because very few polls look at Missouri because it's considered non-competitive typically. That one could be close. That could go down a lean. Don't see this guy, this Democrat. I believe his name is Lucas Coons. Don't really see him winning, but that'd be interesting if we have blue Missouri. If that Iowa poll turns true, I could see a blue Missouri in the Senate. But again, I don't really trust that Des Moines Register Iowa poll, even though they have a track record of being good. All right, now on to the lean states. Florida, unpopular incumbent Republican Rick Scott versus well-funded Democrat in a year that appears to be shaping up to be relatively good for Democrats. It's what's kind of debatable. I think it shadows the line between lean and likely. This could be around a four to 5 point race. Don't really see it being that close. I think Democrats are kind of seeing mirage here. I don't think Florida is competitive anymore. This could be the last competitive race in Florida for a while if it's a good night for Democrats. Also, our other lean red state, we got Montana, incumbent Democrat Tester facing a tough race. This looked pretty doomed for him about a month ago. However, he's kind of tightened that up. If that Iowa poll comes true, Tester could pull it out, but I just don't see it. Um, it's the state is going to vote for Trump probably by around 15, 14 points. Don't it's just too much from the top of the ticket for Tester to overcome. Now coming up to lean states, I'm gonna go Wisconsin Senate and Michigan Senate. These are lean. Again, these ones are a bit iffy. Polling has showed it close. I think we're dealing with poll hurting here. 2022, the Democrats performed pretty well here. I'm saying that this is more of a repeat of 2022 than of 2020. So I'm just going to say same thing. Same reasoning as the presidential. It's pollsters are underestimating Dems here, in my opinion. Now let's go into some tilt states. Texas Senate, tilt R. Ted Cruz, super unpopular. He abandoned the state for Cancun, Mexico during a deadly blizzard. In addition, the Democratic candidate, Colin Arred's a football player. That probably helps more in Texas. He's also kind of a more right wing Democrat. That could help with some moderate voters. And we're also dealing with a higher turnout year. Democrats tend to perform better when there's higher turnouts because more people are voting, and Democrats tend to be more enthusiastic about voting. Now on to Nebraska. This is a weird one. We actually have an independent candidate running here against the incumbent Republican. He's basically a Democrat. So if he hypothetically were to win, which he doesn't according to my prediction, I would have just marked him as blue. But anyways, I actually kind of like him. He's a populist, kind of outsider, pro labor guy. His name is Dan Osborne. So if you see him win on election night, that actually be kind of cool. But I don't think it's enough. Nebraska's a pretty safe red state. Um, it's hard to see Dan Osborne as much as I'd like to see him win. It doesn't look like it, even though the polling is super close. I'm just going to keep that as tilt R. It's basically a toss, but my guts tell me the incumbent Republican Deb Fischer will win. Now this is a super hard one. Ohio, incumbent Democrat, incumbent popular Democrat, Sherrod Brown has a lot of that more populist credentials. Very pro labor, pro union. A lot of union voters who flipped the Trump still like Sherrod Brown. It's kind of hard to tell where this one will go. If it were a midterm with no Donald Trump at the top of the ballot, I think Sherrod Brown would have it in the bag. However, because Donald Trump's at the top of the ballot, he's also very popular in Ohio. That hurts Sherrod Brown and helps his Republican opponent, Bernie Moreno, not to be confused with Bernie Sanders, our boy on the Democratic side. Um, but yeah, I think Sherrod Brown will narrowly keep this one. I think he'll narrowly pull it out. This one's a total toss up, though, in my opinion. Would not be surprised if this voted Republican. Anyways, this is my prediction for the Senate. 51 to 49, Republicans control. If Kamala wins, then that would basically mean a tied Senate. Uh, it could very easily flip either way. Republicans could pull a shock out in Wisconsin or Michigan. Democrats could pull a shock out in Texas or Nebraska. We don't know. We'll see tonight. And have a good day, y'all. Anyone who else watches this, this has actually been a lot longer video than I expected. And yeah, I'll head out and see how long this takes to upload to YouTube. Bye, y'all.